Hello and welcome to this episode where I'm going to be interviewing the famous author Jim Rickards about his latest book, The New Great Depression: Winners and Losers in a Post-Pandemic World. Jim, usually you write books predicting the future, but this one analyzes a recent event. So I'm wondering what made you change your tune.
But I got a call from my agent. They said we'd like a book on the economic effects of the pandemic. By then, it was, of course, the medical effects, but by then it was very clear that this had shut down the economy alongside whatever medical and epidemiological damage there was. But it was written quickly, and it's an interesting thing. You're to some extent you're writing history in the middle of the history. The history is not over, but if anything, that makes it more urgent, I think, to lean forward. And then I also had one more debate with my publisher. They said, because I said, well, I give an outline and included, how the virus got out of Wuhan. I expect it got off leaked from the laboratory, Wuhan Institute of Virology. How it spread, how the lockdowns did no good. They don't stop the spread. They do destroy economies. They're good at that. And then into what I call the New Great Depression. Reasons why fiscal monetary policy won't work. A chapter that is, I won't say unique, but it's very much under discussed and underreported, which has to do with the mental health aspects of the pandemic, not just whether you get it or not or survive, but there's long-term mental health damage from this in terms of behavior. And then finally, a chapter that looks completely forward, chapter 6, talks about what investors can do with your portfolio, how you can prepare for what's coming. So it does have that element. My publisher pushed back a little bit. They said, well, wait a second, Jim. We want you to do this because of the economy. We know you're good at that, but you're not an epidemiologist. Why are you writing about the virus? I said, well, I'm not an epidemiologist, but I did raise my hand and say I went to Johns Hopkins, so I have I'm not intimidated by natural science, but I said, I have to do that. I said, you can't, it would be like writing a book about property damage in New Orleans in 2005 and not mentioning Hurricane Katrina. How can you not mention the thing that's causing the problem? So they agreed, but then to again, hold up my end, I read probably 100 or more peer-reviewed scientific papers, and these were not, this was not QAnon or conspiracy theory stuff. These were prominent virologists, epidemiologists, immunologists from different schools, but, places like, journals like The Lancet, New England Journal of Medicine, Journal of the American Medical Association, a lot of specialized journals just on cell biology and DNA and so forth, and from, the head of medicine at Stanford University. So these were not people who walked in off the street and it's accessible. Again, I don't claim to be an epidemiologist. I'm not, although it's mostly, epidemiology is at least half math. I'm pretty good at math, but you can get a handle on it. But that wasn't the hardest part. The hardest part was, when I started, I said, well, this will be straightforward. There's a lot of science over here. There's a lot of conspiracy theories over here. And I just need to avoid this and go with this. Well, that sounds easy. But when you get into just science, again, the high quality papers I'm talking about, they disagree with each other. So it wasn't, science versus QAnon. It was, one scientist saying lockdowns are the absolute must. You must lock everything down. Another scientist saying, no, that's nonsense. It does no good at all. So there you did have to do more work and pick and choose. So it was an interesting process. I'm happy with the book. It was a national bestseller in the United States, Wall Street Journal bestseller, selling very well around the world, actually.
The claim in the book is that we've completely misunderstood or it's been completely misrepresented to us what the pandemic is, what it's all about, and that the economic consequences of that are going to be far more severe than we realize so far. Is that a fair summary, or is that overstating it?
That's right on the money. So if you were trying to overstate, you did an excellent job of summarizing the book and came up short in terms of overstating. It sounds like an overstatement. So that's certainly true, but it's not. A number of big issues, three big ones. The source of the virus, did it come from the Wuhan lab or the wet market? Two, what about the public health response? Lockdowns, masks, social distancing, et cetera. And then three, would there be a quick bounce back, the so-called V-shaped recovery down and back, or would this be a prolonged recovery, something more like a depression? And I I didn't want to shy away from any of those issues. So I came to the conclusion with the sources I had, and they were good sources. There was stuff out there as early as last spring, that it did leak from the laboratory. Now, that's not to say, people always want to put words in your mouth. That's not to say that it was a bioengineered weapon. I didn't say it was a weapon, maybe, but I can't prove that. But it was bioengineered in the sense it was the result of laboratory functions, gain of function. But, you can say, well, even if you were trying to create a lethal virus for the purpose of coming up with a cure, that's dangerous research, but maybe you can justify it. But step one is still coming up with a lethal virus. So there's a fine line between creating a weapon on the one hand and creating a virus that will enable you to find a cure on the other. Not much difference on the first part, is still coming up with something very, very dangerous. The Chinese are known for sloppy practice. And again, the whole wet market theory never held water, no pun intended, but it's the Chinese did everything possible to cover it up. People disappeared, sources were scrubbed from the web. They went in and cleaned out the wet market and disinfected everything with bleach. Well, that's not a very good way to do forensics if you're trying to figure out what happened. There was a whole all over the world, Australia, United States, UK, and others said, we're ready, willing, and able to send in our top epidemiologists, our top virologists. They'll join with your people. We'll work together. We'll find out what happened. They were never allowed in. People were lied to, et cetera. So the whole course of conduct, you just say, and this is the way you do intelligence work. I always say, if you have all the evidence, a bright high school student could solve the problem, but how do you solve the problem when you don't have all the evidence? And just analytically, you can say, well, why would you go to such great lengths to cover it up if it didn't come from the lab? That's where we are. And the message for investors is get ready for more stock market corrections as the reality of slow growth sinks in, and as the non-sustainability of these high valuations becomes more apparent. Stock markets will correct. They don't do a very good job of forecasting the future. They try. They say, well, today's prices are discounted present value of future earnings. Yeah, but you do a really lousy job of forecasting future earnings and economic growth. So, I'm not saying sell all your stocks and go hide in a cave. I'm saying perhaps lighten up on stocks. I have some gold in my portfolio, and people go, well, Jim, how do you sleep at night? You have some gold. I said, well, how do you sleep at night? You have 90% stocks. And that's the other side of the debate, Nick. So I would say maybe lighten up on exposure stocks, increase your cash. Cash is very low return, but it's very well in deflation, which could be coming. But beyond that, it gives you optionality. You're the one who can go shopping when the price of everything else is crashing all around you.